Hey everybody, my name is LaPretty and I'm the Dominican Voodoo Spiritualist, and today I'm going to be talking about the tired argument about Afro-Latinos. So the reason why I titled this video, I Know Black, I Dominican, is because this conversation is just very tiresome, especially in the diaspora. And there's a lot of things, that I just want to say about it. So I remember I did a video a while back on Cardi B, and it touched on, her identifying as Afro Caribbean versus Dominican and so on and so forth. So everybody knows the famous phrase from Godfrey, who's the Nigerian comedian who talked about how a lot of Latinos are very anti black or ashamed to be black or are very in denial of their blackness. And he is the one that came up with the phrase, I know black, I Dominican. So before I start this video, I just want to go over a couple of explanations. So a lot of people seem to be very confused about what an Afro-Latino actually is. A Afro-Latino is somebody who is a person that was either born in a Latin American country or whose parents were born in a Latin American country, and either one parent or both of their parents is of African descent or Black descent. So in other words, how foundational Black Americans or African Americans or Black Americans. The reason why we are Black is because our ancestors came from Africa and they came to this country. And as time went on, they assimilated into, American culture and birthed us. And that's how we became Black Americans. The same thing goes for Latinos or Afro Latinos. Afro Latinos are people who were born in Latin America, or one parent or both of their parents were born in Latin America, or either both of their parents or one parent had a ancestor or ancestors that were born in Africa that were brought over to their respective Latin American country as a slave. And as time went on, they assimilated into the culture of that Latin American country. And that's how they became an Afro Latino. So that is the definition of an Afro Latino. An Afro Latino is a person that is of Black descent, but that was either born in a Latin American country or one or both of their parents was born in a Latin American country. So now that we're done with the explanation part, this conversation is very tiresome because yes, there is a lot of anti-blackness in the Latin community. Yes, there is a lot of in denialness about blackness in the Latin community, but at the same time, the people that I see make this argument are African Americans. And I'm just not understanding why, from the Black community, why there's such an argument about Latinos identifying as Black. Like in our community, Blackness is seen as either a pride thing or a shaming thing. Because I remember growing up, especially a 90s kid like me, if you were Black, came from two Black parents, no matter what ancestor you had that wasn't Black, no matter what grandparent you had that wasn't Black, no matter who in your bloodline was not Black, you were still Black. You could say, oh, I got Indian in my family, you still Black. Oh, I got Chinese in my family, you still Black. Oh, my grandma Puerto Rican, you still Black. Like back in the day, we immediately shot somebody down who tried to be mixed or different or tried to be on the outside as just Black. If you was Black, you was Black. It didn't matter if you were mixed. It didn't matter if you were half and half or a descendant. We didn't care about none of that stuff. Black was Black. And a lot of people say it comes from the one drop rule. I mean, it kind of did come from the one drop rule due to slavery. But at the same time, back then, the Black community was a monolith. Like if you were Black, you ate the same type of food, you grew up the same, you went to church, you wore the same types of clothes, you knew the lingo. Black people back then used to dap people up or, toot their head up when they saw each other in public spaces. We knew each other, we saw each other, and passing and everything. And, the music we liked, the TV shows we watched was the same. So back in the day, the Black American community was a monolith where a lot of us did grow up the same, look the same, dress the same, and were the same. But now things have changed and it's a little different. So one thing that So going along with that, I think that is where that comes from. Because growing up, a lot of blackness was embedded in us in our upbringing, that if you had an ounce of black in you, if you look black, talk black, sound black, or whatever, you were black. And if you try to deviate from that blackness, you were a traitor, you were an outsider, you were um, a self-hating black person, and so on and so forth. And I feel as though since that was done to us, we're projecting that onto the Latin community. It is a known fact that in the Latin community, to each its own. You do have some Latinos who are proud to be black. You have some that are not, and you have some that acknowledge their blackness, and then you have some that do not. But we, as like foundational Black Americans, African Americans, have to understand that their blackness is not our fight. Their blackness is not our concern. And we shouldn't be arguing so much about whether they're black or not. Because it doesn't make sense to me how African Americans want to dictate to another ethnicity, to another group, how black they are when our cultures are not the same. Like, yes, when it comes to Afro Latinos, they come in many different colors. They could be light, dark, brown, light, dark brown, in between, whatever type of color of brown they could be. And yes, their hair textures do vary. It could be fine, curly, mixed patterns, mixed textures. It could be 4C, nappy. And, I know people don't like the word nappy, but it is what it is. Or they wear their hair in dreads, braids, locks, kind of like what we do, because, yes, a lot of Afro Latinos do have black hair because their lineage is black and they just so happen to get the black gene in hair. So, of course, they have to wear their hair in safe hairstyles, because when you do go over to the Dominican Republic, I've been over there, a couple of times, and they do wear braids in the Dominican Republic. They wear dreads and they do wear curls. They do wear natural hairstyles in the Dominican Republic. Don't let anybody fool you and make you think that, oh, Dominicans don't, take care of themselves. They don't take care of their blacks or whatever. Yes, they do. If you go to the DR, you will see cocoa butter. You will see shea butter. You will see um, hair care products that are made for people who wear braids, who wear curls, who wear, protective styles, because a lot of Dominicans have African ancestry or African, descent in them. And a lot of them do have black or African textured hair. So they have to take care of it just like we do here in the States with safe hairstyles or wigs. And a lot of Dominicans do, get doobie wraps and blowouts, or they wear, wigs like we do here. So those are the similarities when it comes to like the food. A lot of Afro Latino food does share similarities with African American food, because when you go to the Dominican Republic, in my opinion, Dominican food is like Spanish black food, because in the Caribbean they do like to eat, corned beef. They like to eat They like to eat, callaloo. They like to eat rice and beans. And if you grew up with like country black grandparents, like myself, they ate a lot of that food. The pork chops, the pig, the pork rinds, the collard greens, the fat back, and all of that. If you eat like traditional, like gumbo food from the DR and PR and even Cuba, it does share a lot of similarities to black African American food that was especially in the South when a lot of our grandparents or great grandparents was coming up. But the reason why there are similarities is because of that Africanness and that blackness, but that does not mean that it's the same. When it comes to African American culture and Afro Latino culture, yes, we both may be black, but our culture is not the same. The language is not the same. And the experiences are not the same. And one thing, and I'm not trying to cause division when I say this, because a lot of black Americans will sit and want to, claim Afro Latinos as black as African American, but they're the same ones that complain about Latinos getting more opportunities than black Americans, Latinos having a better lifestyle, better careers, or a better quality of life than African Americans, or how Latinos get more success or more help in life or in the world than Black Americans do. And my thing is that if you have those sentiments and if you feel that way or you have those feelings, then why are you claiming them so hard? Because that's what's not making sense, because you can't claim a group of people that you're against. And you can't claim a group of people that you talk about. Like Cardi B, for example, perfect example. Like Cardi B, ever since she came up, we have claimed her as black. In the black community, Cardi B is black. Yes, she's Dominican, but she's black. But when she came out with her Grow Good hair hair care line, a lot of people were complaining about, oh, our hair is not going to grow long like hers because she's Hispanic and we're black and our hair don't grow that long, or we can't grow long hair. Our hair, and I'm saying, like, well, how can you say now that your hair is not going to grow like hers when, because she's Hispanic, you're black, when you've been claiming her as black this whole time? You get what I'm saying? And it is just not making, and it's not making any sense. It's like you can't sit here and be for somebody that you know is different, but when they come out with products that are, hair care based or skin care based or feminine hygiene based, and you know that people of certain cultures are genetically and phonetically, made different based on, genes and ancestry and whatnot, then you want to complain. Because I think that in the black community, and I'm just be honest because I could say it, we don't value being culturally educated on anybody but us. We don't. If you're black, you're black. You white, you white. If you mixed, you mix. Whatever we think you are, that's what we claim you as, in spite of what you actually are. And that's how we get a lot of ourselves caught up in these, rigid race conversations and arguments and whatnot. Is because we don't know how to let people be. Race and culture and community is not seen as the same in the United States like it is in other countries. Like, yes, people may be black that are from, Latin America, the Caribbean, Africa, and Europe, but the cultures are not the same. And that's not to say that one is better than the other. That's not to say that one is least than the other. It's just to say that there is a difference. Because, African Americans eat collard greens. Jamaicans eat callaloo. We eat macaroni and cheese. Trinidadians eat macaroni pie. We eat fried chicken. Dominicans eat pica pollo, which is Dominican fried chicken. And Dominican fried chicken, it tastes like, to me, the seasoning, it has like a Chinese, the seasoning of pica pollo has like a Chinese like flavor and hint to it. To me, it does. But Southern black fried chicken, it has more so, the salt, the pepper, the hot sauce. It has that type of seasoning. So it's the same, but it's culturally different. And I, don't really like talking about, race and color and stuff too much on this channel, but I just felt the need to say it because it just doesn't make any sense how there's so much bullying towards Dominicans, who are black or of African descent or may look black or whatever, and we want to claim them so bad and we want to shame them into their blackness, or we want to just make them black, black, black without respecting who they are and their identity. Because, like me, for example, yes, I do have Dominican heritage. I do. I have African American heritage. And I could get away with being, African American and Dominican because of me being brown. And because of me, wearing my hair like this, or if I wear like a wig that's any other type of hair texture, I can get away with it because Dominicans and African Americans are known for being brown and having protective styles and wearing curly hair, things like that. The only difference is that black people speak English and Dominicans speak Spanish. That's the difference. And so, and I feel like the reason why black Americans want to claim Dominicans as black so bad, because like I said before, in our community, we did it as a shutdown. Because, you may be mixed with this, or you may be half with that, or your grandma or somebody in your family with this, but you're not better than me, so you still black. If I'm black, you black too. You got dark skin like me, your hair like me, and it's kind of been this competition thing within our community as far as blackness, because it's like in the community, if you said that you were mixed or light skinned or whatever, you were saying that you were better, even though you weren't saying it. And that's just pretty much what it is. But my thing is that we have to let other people identify with how they want to identify. Because the thing is, people are going to be who they are. People are going to be who they want to be. People are going to be what they like to be. And, it just doesn't make them wrong. And then I wanted to talk about Jocelyn Hernandez too. So I subscribe to her Why Are You Here TV thing, and I already unsubscribed from it. It's just too much. I feel like we already know her story because Jocelyn Hernandez, she's been on TV for the past, 10, 12 years already. So we know her whole story. We know her upbringing, her parents, the way she was raised, her and Stevie J, Bonnie Bella. We know all of that. And my thing is that I did not like how with Amber Rose, how she was so harsh and so hard on her. Because my thing is with Jocelyn Hernandez, I like Jocelyn Hernandez for her vivaciousness, her personality, and who she is, but she is down putting towards a lot of women. Because my issue that I have with Jocelyn Hernandez is that you say that you're a black woman, but you put black people under you the way that a lot of Spanish women do. Because my issue that I have with, Latinos claiming to be, black and whatnot is that if you're black like me, then why are we not equal? If you're black like me, why are we not in shared spaces? If you're black like me, then why are you stepping above me because you speak Spanish? Or why is it that if you're black like me, you're saying I'm black, but I'm not black like you? If you're black like me, then why am I not respected the same way that you respect your mother, your grandmother? Because Jocelyn Hernandez, she could say, oh, I'm black this, but she doesn't act like a black woman. She acts like a Spanish woman. Because if you're Latino or if you've been around a lot of Latinos or you've grown up with them or worked with them, a lot of them act like that because we talk about white privilege, but there is a lot of Latin privilege as well. Because as Latin people, just like with white people, they have a lot of privilege within their community. They have a lot of privilege within their color. By them being Latin, they have a lot of advantages. They have a lot of privileges because they may be a person of color, but they don't move like black people, and black people can't move like them. They will get away with saying stuff that's inappropriate, no matter where they are, but black people can. They will be able to move more freely, in whatever community they step in or whatever job place they step in, whatever religious space they step in or whatnot. But a black person can't do what they do. They can't move. We can't move like them. We can't speak like them. We can't have everything like them unless sometimes if we marry into them, befriend them, or if we go into business with them. Because black people have to understand that just because somebody shares the same skin tone as us doesn't mean that they're like us. Because in the Black community, there is a lot of, privilege and there's a lot of, status that comes with being a Latin person. And a lot of people in the black community know that because when it comes to Jocelyn, Jocelyn does not carry herself like a black woman. And a black woman is not somebody who's humble, not somebody who's lowly, not somebody who carries themselves with their head held down. Jocelyn, a black woman, is somebody who, knows who she is, walks how she walks. She, conquers anything that comes her way. She holds her head up high. She's confident and she knows herself. But Jocelyn carries herself like a Latin woman. And what I mean by that is that she comes in, she dominates, she conquers any and everybody that she encounters, but she thinks she's better because she's Spanish and she knows her privileges. She thinks that she's better than black women because she already stole a black woman's boyfriend, Mimi Foster, on Love and Hip Hop. She has a cabaret show where most all of the girls on there are black and she treats them like dogs and slaves and hoes. And she's even slept and she's even like sexually used and probably abused a lot of black women. Because Jocelyn talks about her sexuality and stuff all the time. Because the thing is with her, like it's cool to sleep with women and to fool with women, but you don't want to marry one. Because when it comes to marriage and the church and things like that, oh, that's when you got to get with a man. But when you was wild and out of control, didn't know what to do, you wanted to be with a black woman, sexually or romantically. And I don't think a lot of people pay attention to that because when people say they love blackness and like black this and that, but when it comes time to actually be for a black woman, it's like you break and run or you done playing and now you want to get right or get back right. So, and that's what I see with Jocelyn. And I didn't feel like it was right for Jocelyn to call out Amber Rose's lack of blackness or her in denialness because Jocelyn, you're not a black American woman. You are a black Spanish woman, but more so a Spanish woman. Like, yeah, you may be a Puerto Rican of black descent, but you use the the black card as a cop out or as a reason for you saying the N word and being in black spaces and whatnot, just like Amber Rose did. Because when Amber Rose came up, she was a stripper. When Amber Rose came into the game, she was a stripper at 17 years old in Philly. And then when she met Kanye, that's when she urbanized herself and she started wearing like, the stunner shades that Kanye was wearing back then. And then, she when Nicki Minaj, made the bustier BBL trend real popular. She was cool with Kanye and Young Money, Cash Money, and all those people. And she, kind of just flourished up in that stripper hoe culture up until it didn't serve her anymore because a lot of these things that have, popped off and became popular and whatnot in the black community, they were trends up until they just couldn't last anymore. Because the thing is that when you think about it, Black China, Amber Rose, and Nicki Minaj, they don't really have anything to do anymore but be business people or to do something else. Because the strip club culture has came and went, the BBL culture has came and went, and the being with a rapper and the being found in the strip club era has came and went. So what else is there to do? Everybody got BBLs, everybody got, tattoos and different color hair. So it's like everybody looks the same. There's no unique look to sell anymore. So but with Jocelyn, I just didn't feel like it was her place to talk to Amber Rose the way that she did about her blackness because Amber Rose, when you think about it, she's American, but she's not a black American herself. Amber Rose's mom is Cape Verdean. And I'm not gonna argue, about that because with Cape Verdean people, to a lot of Americans, we do see them, to each his own when it comes to Cape Verdean people identifying as black. But Cape Verdean people are islander people. They're island people because Cape Verde is an island. Because I think Benzino, his mom is Cape Verdean. Left Eye from TLC was Cape Verdean, and Amber Rose. Amber Rose's mom is Cape Verdean, but she's more so like caramel skin, kind of tan skin like. But a lot of Cape Verdean people are from the island of Cape Verde, which is off the coast of Africa. So some people may deem them as black. They themselves may see themselves as black, but Cape Verdeans are island people with their own language and culture and that. So her mom is not African American, and her dad is an Italian man. So, in all honesty, she's really Cape Verdean and Italian. So Jocelyn, trying to talk about Amber Rose and her blackness and stuff like that, she don't even know her because just like Jocelyn, Amber Rose kind of fell into that assimilation of black culture because we all know a lot of people who are racially ambiguous, they have a little blackness to them, but the hair and the texture, they fall in that black line because of their features and ancestry and their heritage. They may be light skinned, but they got a black nose, black features, lips, boobs, hips, and all of that. So they fall in line with the black aesthetic, whether they want to or not. So if it's going to be profitable or make them money, then that's what they're going to do. But my thing is, I just didn't think it was right for Jocelyn to sit and talk to Amber Rose as if she was Black America herself because Jocelyn Hernandez is not. And, Jocelyn did admit that in the Puerto Rican community and the Dominican community, that there is a lot of, denialness of blackness, because even in the Dominican Republic, instead of Dominicans saying, I know black or Dominican, they say I'm Indian. And when I say Indian, they say they're like Taino, or they're like indigenous or native, because the Arawak Indians, now the Tainos in Puerto Rico, they don't quote me on this, but a lot of the Tainos, and I know everybody see in Puerto Rico, they like to paint the Tainos as light skinned. But a lot of the indigenous people in the Caribbean, they was dark skinned, dark chocolate or red, or they had like really, really red tannish skin, where, if they stayed in the sun a little too long, they could be seen as black. But they just had, like long, fine black hair, things like that. Well, in the DR, instead of people saying I'm black or Dominican, they say, I'm Indian. But they would be black or whatever. But as I mentioned before, it's not always seen as a good thing in the Latin community to be black. Because just like here in the United States, when we were brought here as slaves, and even after slavery, we were deemed as trash, as people to not invest in, as people to not love, as people to not value, and as people to not see anything, or people to not value, or people to not acknowledge or see. And in Latin America, it was the same thing. When you go to Puerto Rico, when you go to the Dominican Republic, to like the black areas, because if you go to Louisa, for example, in Puerto Rico, that's a black city and whatnot, but there are black Puerto Ricans that live in other places, but that's like the main one. You go over to Piñones and Louisa, you can even see it on YouTube, because it's a lot of mainstream mainland Americans now that have moved to Puerto Rico, and they've done videos and TikToks and stuff about Puerto Rico and where they live. You go to a lot of these black areas in Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic, they look just like the ghettos over here in the United States. They look just like the black communities and the black neighborhoods over here in the United States, because the same things that happened to us, it happened to them. We had thriving black communities. Everybody was working, everybody was educated and whatnot. Then as time went on, opportunities got bleak, or, people wanted to move away. They didn't want to, remain in those cities, or the city or the country or island as a whole stopped investing in them. And, bad habits and influences moved in town, and it destroyed the area. And the same thing happened in Latin America. But like I said, that message of blackness being a bad thing is the same. So in the Latin community, identifying as black and being black is not always seen as a proud or prideful thing. And that's not something you could push into people. Because we as African Americans, we have to understand like our, fight in the United States, and ask ourselves, we're here as Black Americans. We get bullied for our hair. We get bullied for our skin tone and complexion. We get bullied for our background. We get bullied for the way that we look. We get imitated. We get appropriated. We don't always get acknowledged for everything that we do. We are ostracized, and brutalized by the police. And we have to deal with a lot of disparities. And yes, a lot of African Americans are successful and are, educated and are highly gifted. And we're seen. Our community is here and seen. And a lot of people in the Black community are seen. But you have to think about it. If you have a privileged community that already has privilege for them simply being who they are and where they come from, why would they want to identify with the group that has to fight for what they get easily, for what they don't have to fight for, and for what they don't have to constantly say or repeat or advocate for? And I just feel like there's just a lot of lack of understanding, because yes, racism is wrong and in denialist is wrong, but I feel like we have to look at it from a different angle, because even in the Black American community, a lot of our ancestors assimilated and passed, because it's not even just with the Creole people in New Orleans. It's not even just with, racially ambiguous, slaves back in the day, but a lot of black African Americans, because I don't really see too much of this now. But as a 90s kid back then, you always had black people who were black, but they didn't look black. And they may come off as white, Hispanic, or mixed, but they fought to the death that they was, black. And with people like that, those were the ones they had to assimilate. Because if they could pass as white, they did. If it made life easy, it made life, worse than while and whatnot, that's what they did, because that's how they were able to survive, and that's how they were able to make it. And then before I go, a lot of the African American pioneers were racially ambiguous, and a lot of that racial ambiguity helped them to become the pioneers that we have. Thurgood Marshall, he was a judge. He was racially ambiguous. Frederick Douglass, his mom was a black slave, but his father was a white plantation owner. Webb Du Bois, his mom was Haitian, and his dad was, I think, a white slave. And let me look something up because I don't want to be wrong. The man who invented the relaxer. Yes, the man who invented the relaxer and the man who invented I might be wrong about the relaxer part, but I know I'm right about the traffic lights. Yes, Garrett Morgan. Garrett Morgan was racially ambiguous in his younger days because his ancestors were African American and Native American. And one way that he was able to get, I believe, a patent for the traffic lights or a patent for one of the inventions that he had was that he played on his racial ambiguity. So when he was able to dress up like a native or dress up like an Indian, he was able to get more respect from the white investors than he would have if he was black. So I say this to say this, that people need to respect the way that people assimilate, the way that people behave, and the way that people identify, because you don't know what comes with that. Because being a racially ambiguous person or being a mixed heritage or multicultural person, it is not always as definitive as you think it is, but it's not always as easy as you think it is. Yes, there are a lot of benefits that come with being racially ambiguous, but there's a lot of challenges and a lot of reasoning behind the way that people do what they do. So I hope you guys enjoyed this live. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and leave interesting comments, but respectful comments in the comment section. And have a good day.